I hereby call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. This evening, we have one item on the agenda. This evening, we are going to discuss the strategy plan to allow the opportunity to discuss the main goals for council for the year, and then that will allow for transparency with projects, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Winterbauer.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to put the strategic plan on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole, just to start the discussion. I'm sure in all of our professions and life, we've had plans, be it if it's a strategic plan for a company or yourself or your development plan, all of that. So I wanted to see if we could just start with, hey, these are the goals for the year. And bringing in the different departments and administration as well, just so we're all on the same page. And this has just kind of come up over the last year. You know, as council members, we get a lot of, I'm upset about this, I don't like how this is going, they're not doing their job, kind of, we get a lot of that. And so I would like to have an appropriate reply, and again, really work on that transparency of, well, this department, these are their top goals for this year, this is the resources they currently have right now, this is the manpower, and this is what they're working on. Just to have more of a positive response too, instead of let me check in on that. And then also just saving everyone's time as well. You know, I talked to Mr. Powers a lot about a lot of different things, but I felt personally, if I knew, okay, this department's working on this, you know, this is the mayor's top projects for this year, these are the resources we have, this is what we really want to focus on. And then bringing the committees into that too. So the economic committee really knows, okay, this is where the focus is this year. What can we do as council members and committees to support the city, be it administration, be it, you know, whatever grants or resources that might be available out there. So I know there's a lot of different ways to go about that. So I thought we could, you know, basically just start that conversation here and see what might be the appropriate way for the city to kind of start that process. And it being an open process to, hey, we've kind of figured out how we want to go about this and the goals that we have, and then kind of opening that up to the public as well, as saying, okay, this is what this year looks like. Any other input, you know, we can kind of take in from that, and then really kind of have those goals and then update them. You know, every committee of the whole, like, okay, so-and-so updated this, this is the new date for the next update. I'll just bring in like the Elm project, you know, this is currently where MSD is, just so we have that information easily available and it's accessible to us and residents as well. I know it's a lot, but that's, you know, I figure we've all done this probably in some aspect of our professional and personal life. So kind of bringing everyone to the table and building a plan for that.
Any thoughts? Mrs. Hoover?
One of the first questions that I had when I was looking at how other councils manage this is it seems like a lot of councils do like retreats that are typically facilitated by an outside organization. And I was wondering if the city of Norwood has ever done anything like that.
Not to my knowledge, yeah.
Okay. I don't know that we would necessarily need facilitation, but I'm absolutely, in my experience on council, I feel like a lot of the stuff we're doing is reactive rather than proactive. And I know, you know, I'm on the OKI Board of Regional Directors right now, and we're looking at projects for budget year 2027. So the current projects, those should have been looked at 3 years ago. So we need to be looking ahead because we can't be like, oh, well, we need money now, let's start scrounging. And so if we had a more organized game plan, strategy, what as a city, what as a council, what are our priorities, what do we want to be doing, what direction are we going in, I think would be really helpful. I'd love to have outside facilitation, but of course, like everything, it costs money. So I don't know if we would even have the budget for that.
Mr. Kelch?
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe some of those resources, well, all those resources we already have in place. So every year, each department puts together their budget that we can approve. So there's that, where they're coming in and saying, hey, here's what we anticipate. Obviously, there's things like the underpass by Waterworks that just happens that we need to react now on. Those things come up, and those are emergencies, we gotta approve them that way, but as far as kind of getting a budget to create this strategic plan where we can sit down and talk about this, we have those department heads that put together those budgets already, so we are getting that information. So we can earmark that when it comes in and talk with each department or have them come up and address council to explain kind of what their needs are, why their needs are this, why this budget stands where it stands. Those are things I think we can do, that we do kind of do, but we're not doing enough, I think. Another thing is some of the departments, when they do see things coming or know things come that are standing yearly things, marking those on a calendar better within their own departments to say, hey, we're going to put this out to council long enough out that we can have 3 readings if necessary, versus, oh, it's that time again, we kind of passed it over, let's throw it on as an emergency. That's something, going to the transparency bit, that I think would help a lot, is anything that can be helped, putting it in front of council with enough time to allow for 3 individual readings. If we decide, hey, this is kind of an emergency, let's go ahead and do it, great. If not, your bases are already covered. And to your other point of looking years out and with the financials, that we have a finance committee who meets, and the chair would talk to, the auditor, the treasurer, and kind of get an idea of what's going on. So, I mean, we have these resources already in place. I think the discussion should kind of be geared more towards how do we use them more efficiently than we are now. Not saying we're not doing them right, we're doing them and we're getting by, but how do we, instead of get by, really tackle, what we're here to do? And being reactionary versus proactive, as a council, our job is to approve funds for other departments to use. So it's kind of really hard without talking to each of these department heads in a forum such as this, where it is transparent. It's kind of really hard to have that proactive even look to it, to where we are just kind of reactionary to yearly meet, go over the FRP, approve these budgets, and that it kind of leaves us in a reactionary state, which I do believe is still within the realm of what our job is as council when it comes to the finances of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Kelch. Anyone else? Mrs. Winterbauer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the budget. We have that, we get access to it, we see it, we approve it. I just feel too that Norwood is at that point where we're getting momentum, right? Things are changing, things are happening. We're starting to get that little bit of wiggle room. We're hopefully at the end of our fiscal emergency, and kind of like what we've been doing going through that. Like, this is where we currently are. This is what each department's doing to try and get us out of that. So just that kind of momentum, like each department, I mean, things can be outdated, it happens everywhere. And so I was kind of thinking on that level too. And it just really just stems from residents reaching out to me and like, complaints about this, complaints about that. And really having a good idea of this department is aware of these concerns, and this is what they are doing, and this is the manpower we have, this is the resources we have, this is their number 1 priority, and this is where they currently are to address any concerns that, might be as a city. But having those prioritized, right? Because we can't get it all done in one day, let alone 1 year, maybe 5 years. But just really kind of having those priorities set up that we're aware of, each department head's working on that. And again, like kind of taking that step back, I don't want to waste anyone's time. Like, I don't want to have to keep calling everyone and being like, I got this complaint, I got that complaint, let's do this, let's do that, when they're probably already working on another huge project and like, well, I'm doing this. So again, just kind of bring that all outside of the budget. I mean, I think the budget's been going great, you know, that transparency's there. We're working on the plan to try and get out of that, but kind of taking it a step further. You know, just so residents know, like, hey, we get, you know, there's some areas that we need to work on, but this is what we're doing, and these are the resources we currently have to do that, just so it's, again, more of that positive output there of everyone's working, everyone's doing the best job that they can with that. So that's where, again, trying to bring in the committees too, so we're all on the same page and can be helpful with that.
I mean, I just to add on, I think that's a great thing, and, you know, getting complaints from residents, I've done that too in my couple years here, and, you know, trying to educate them one by one when it comes in of, hey, this is what they do, this is how they work, this is the process. It can get kind of, you know, daunting, it's part of the job, but it adds up with time, and, you know, I think the best way is, here's the platform we have, it's televised on Facebook, YouTube, this is our best platform that we have as a whole to speak to the city. So probably, I think what would help is inviting some of these department heads in more frequently in this kind of setting, whether it's committee of the wholes, whether it's council meetings, regular council meetings, or even committee meetings, to say, hey, we've gotten these lodged complaints over this amount of time. We'd like you to come in and kind of discuss about what your department does. How can these residents reach out to you and get this information? Maybe it's stuff that we already have literature on. Maybe it's stuff that they're prepared to answer that we're just not guiding these residents in the proper manner. I mean, I think if we invite them here and we get them heard, we get them seen, and the platform we have, we're using that more efficiently to kind of help that kind of hiccup in the process. I think it would be beneficial as well.
I think Mr. Thompson has his hand up.
Okay, I wonder if there's some way to facilitate the gathering of the information that already exists, specifically the kind of things you both are talking about that maybe already exists within the departments. It's kind of like when working on the FRP and we've got the capital expense program. I think that's the kind of strategic forward thinking that I'm more interested in, even more than just knowing what each department is currently working on. Like, I would love to see council as a whole, with the mayor and with the city, talk about real strategic direction for the city. Like, do we want to attract a certain kind of business? What do we have to do to attract that kind of business to the city? What do we want to do beyond the things that people always ask about? Yes, we have streets that need to be done, and I think there's probably a lot that can be done to put together a shareable plan on that. You got the FRP, these are obvious things that we know are priorities, but I don't think we'll answer what these other priorities are, but really kind of high level, what kind of city do we want in 5 years? Not just in July, or not just in January of next year. Where do we want Norwood to be in 5 years? Where do we want Norwood to be in 10 years? What does that look like? What can we do now to begin to spur that kind of change or that kind of growth, whatever needs to happen to kind of realize that vision? And I honestly don't know that we, even as a group, we all, I mean, I know that everybody who runs for council ends up on council, whether we have different ideas or not. We all just want what's best for the city, and there might be different ways of doing it. But, like, I don't know that we have shared goals for the city beyond doing what's best for the city. And I think it is the kind of thing that you need somebody to facilitate and moderate rather than just sit around and lob darts at walls. But to come up with that sort of agreed upon vision for where we want to go, to me, it would be very valuable. And it'd be a kind of thing, like you said, all the committees could work on it, and it could be part of what we do on the regular, in addition to being just better informed to inform citizens when they come to us with issues.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Did so? Mrs. Franson?
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's kind of almost two things here. One is being able to communicate what is happening to residents when things are happening in the city, what our plans are, like concretely, and then also having this separate, more overarching strategic plan for, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. So it seems like for the first part, that's a little easier in that I think a lot of that information exists already, and it's kind of getting it into one cohesive thing that we can, A, use as a reference if people ask us stuff, and B, even have it publicly available. It wouldn't be the FRP necessarily, because, looking through 2022's FRP, there's a lot of good information in there, but to a layperson or someone who doesn't even know if the lights are going to be replaced on their street, that's a lot to go through. So being able to get all that stuff together, get the plans that I know like the fire department has plans for when they're replacing stuff. I know that we've got infrastructure, street, maintenance, ongoing things that are happening 2-3 years out. So I guess that is something probably that we can work on together within our committees, just getting the data from stuff from relevant to our committees and then giving it to one person and they put it into one big document somewhere. The other part, facilitator outside might be great. I don't know how much that would cost. I know that even just for a parks master plan, it was, in the tens of thousands of dollars region to have someone out there to do the surveys and get information and make up a nice document and all that. And so I don't know where we'd find that money. I think it would be great, and maybe something that we can look at special grants for. But the other part, I think we could start doing maybe whenever the next committee meeting for all the committees are. I know for infrastructure specifically, I can get a lot of that information right now as soon as I find it in my email. So that's kind of my feeling, maybe steps to move forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Franson. Anyone else?
I'm still trying to figure out how I want to phrase this, because I do think that they're two separate conversations. One, sort of what direction do we want to go in the city? I think you articulated what I was trying to say really well. The other part, I'm struggling with, having like a document, because I think that might be, that feels like, oh, that's a great solution, but I don't think that quite hits what I'm thinking of when I'm seeing the deficits. And so I'm trying to, I feel like a lot of the departments here are very siloed, and they're very autonomous, and that probably works really well, but that means sometimes that the water department doesn't know what's happening in the building department, doesn't know what's happening in the police department, and all of those can interact with each other, and then if they're sharing information straight up to us, we might know it, but then they don't necessarily know it. I know that, I'm on OKI, but I don't know what's going on in the finance committee to know, oh, here's a project that we are actively considering for down the road. So like those sorts of, I keep thinking about these sort of cross connections and needing them to both go up and down and side to side. And so that's why the document doesn't quite seem like the solution. One of the visions I have, which I don't know is feasible, is literally, can we have all the department heads in one room and maybe not go over their budget line item by line item, but talk, yeah, right, that sounds awful. But maybe talk about, these are the challenges in our department. What are the things that they need us on council to help them, our job is legislation. How can we help you in your building department work more efficiently? I know that, a while back, Carrie was saying, really need to work on fees. So I know that that's something that Noah's working on. But like, those are the sorts of things, that's part of our job. What we've been charged with is to help them work more efficiently. But if we don't know what their challenges are, then we can't be of help to them in that regard. And I know I was just over at the police department, not the police department, excuse me, the fire department, and, there are some questions, they're not sure if when they make a referral out, Where does it sort of goes off into the vapor? And so they don't, so there's, again, a lack of connectivity about then what happens in those departments that then impacts the fire department. So all that, for me, that's a piece that I feel is what needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
I would think what I mentioned about facilitating the conversation is like a simple kind of worksheet, is the wrong word, but worksheet where it's like, what's your top 5 priorities for this year? What's your top 5 challenges? What's your top 5 opportunities? What's your top 5 barriers? You know, just to just so that you get a really quick snapshot of, it could be an individual, it could be a department, it could be an elected official, you know, but just to quick, like that kind of thing, I think, because another thing, what I don't want to do is create an excess amount of work for another department or employee to have to collect, compile, and present what is going on to us. And so, I mean, a lot of what I think you're talking about is general, like, consider this a municipal corporation. It's general communication issues within a business structure. You have different groups, they're siloed, they don't talk to each other, they might report up. We have one of the people they report up to right here, who hopefully keeps a good idea of all the things that are going on, but doesn't necessarily get shared behind. So that's like, that starts to float into almost city government management kind of an issue to me, and less of what are our strategic priorities. But again, I think if there's a way to quickly reach out and compile those kind of top line items that we could, in a situation or in a forum like this, just discuss with each other, with or without the person who put them together. It's a thought.
Well, all this, it kind of just circles me back to what I was saying initially. I don't think we need a form like a questionnaire. I don't think we need to do any of that or try to champion some new way to do business here. I think what we have is a well-oiled machine. Maybe it needs a little bit more oil, but it's still moving. And we just need to use the resources we currently already have. If we need to communicate to, administration, some of these departments, and say, hey, here's what we would like to have, is department heads at meetings, or representatives from those departments. At our committee meetings, invite them. When I chaired the Parks Committee, I often had the Recreation Director, Clint Zimmerman from Public Works there to kind of, even if I needed them or not, hey, we got this, if we can't decide or figure out the answers, hey, they're here, can you speak and kind of give us, a little insight, so whoever is watching at home is going to find value in that meeting, and they're going to talk, and they're going to say, hey, they're putting out real solid information in these meetings, and even if we don't get all the live views, we're going to get some reviews or rewatches of the meetings. People are going to be in the know. People are going to be more interested in coming to the meetings, because it's not just us reading and voting on emergency. And one thing we talked about in the past on the transparency item is get with the department heads and saying, hey, we need you guys to plan out when these things are coming, unless it is an actual emergency that we need done now. Like the road collapsing is, something we can't plan, unplanned, unbudgeted for emergencies, we understand, but certain things you can certainly plan out and know they're coming up. Know this is a yearly thing or a quarterly thing or what have you, and really be hard on it and say, hey, we're not going to consider this or we're not going to approve this unless it is done that way, creating that standard, or actually, reinforcing that standard versus creating something new that we already have in place. Like when it comes to the clerk counsel's office, if it doesn't have a cover sheet, we're not supposed to take it. That happens all the time. And then we're left wondering who's putting this up. We enforce that standard to say, hey, we're not going to accept this or consider this unless it's a true emergency or unless you have the cover letter. I think that goes a long way in helping with the transparency aspect inviting these department heads or representatives to meetings, committee meetings, meetings like this, the conversation is facilitated by the president of council. I don't know a better way and a more cost-efficient way for the city than using what we have to our advantage for the residents that we represent. That's where I'm at with it. I really thought about this before I was coming. I think that's the best way. We have to take it upon ourselves, not to recreate, but to get together like this. We're having a discourse and talking about it and try to come up with this kind of plan. Hey, this is the standard we want set. This is what we want to have. I don't think it's much work to have a representative come to one meeting every 2 weeks. I think that can be, beneficial not only to us and the residents, but them and their office as well. Again, I just think just using the resources we have already in a more efficient manner is the way that we can kind of accomplish the goal that we're seeking here today.
Thank you, Mr. Kelch. Anyone else? Mrs. Winberg?
Thank you. Are we allowed to ask if Mr.
Yeah.
Powers? I have a question. Is that
Sure.
okay? Mr. Powers, what is your thought on, I like the idea of having department heads come to committee of the whole. We kind of schedule it as needed. What would be realistic for that, in your opinion?
In terms of, what would be as needed, if it's a piece of legislation, we can always bring those department heads in for that. Some cities do an annual report for each department head, so they're, guaranteed to be there for one, and they'll give a good amount of information. Bringing them all in and having them all talk all the time can be a little bit overwhelming. You'll never get that deep into anything. So that's kind of where that annual report models come from. A lot of places do find that helpful, so that would be, I think, a good thing for us to look at. Gives a little more one-on-one time with a specific department, a little more deep dive into it, talk about the personnel, the equipment needs, what those goals are. You can kind of go through that, throughout that, and it's in a manageable bite, if you will.
Ms. Freeman?
I just had a question for Mr. Powers. So what would be a good time of year in which this would be the most useful for everyone involved? Like with the budget year starting different times, is there a good time that's where people have a better idea of what is going to happen next year, or just whenever?
Usually it's just kind of done whenever you try to get them all done before the budget season really starts.
Yeah.
So you would want to, kind of put them in that January to October timeframe. Typically, places will do no more than one per meeting, and usually just one per month. That way you're not kind of packing the agenda full of department heads pontificating too long. And it gives you some time to digest it and ask questions before you get to the next department head who has more information to offer. But gives that yearly check-in point. In terms of it being, something necessary for the budget, when you're hearing from somebody in January, all that stuff's not going to be as applicable, but you'll be able to touch back in and say, oh, in January we talked about this was the department goal, where are we at with that? So it does help keep everybody a little more informed.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Anyone else?
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Mrs. Franzen?
So, my mind just went blank completely. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful blank piece of paper. It sounds like what would be very useful for all of us and something relatively easy to do is maybe starting next meeting or the meeting after, figure out which department heads might be able to meet with us in the committee of the whole, have them talk about the needs for the department during that for 45 minutes to an hour, let's say, as we do with the whole, and try to get them all in before October. Does that sound reasonable to folks for that particular part of the planning type thing?
So just for a clarification, was your thought to then do like once a month a committee of the whole before the council meeting, and then have the department head come in?
Yes, if that makes sense to everyone else, or depending on the head, maybe it works better one meeting, or before one meeting than before another. I don't want to say it must be this time every month in case there's something with the department heads where they have other stuff going on in their life, hypothetically.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Sewer?
How many departments would would you think we have, Mr. Powers? I know, right?
Place.
Police, fire, public works, recreation. You would probably want something on billing, and you may want something on water separately, so those would be two that I would need to put together. Community development, let's talk about economic development, where all of that is.
Tax.
You know, tax, auditor's office.
Treasurer, or I guess,
Tax and treasury would probably just be one that you would want to do together, although I would leave that up to Mr. Bonzel to make that decision. And then we may want to talk a little bit about the community center, although that's a relatively smaller function. It may still be something that we want to bring up, keep in mind, have some discussions on.
That's like 10?
That would be like 10. Some of those may be able to be
Do
combined.
2 and 1?
Yeah.
yeah, like,
You know, when you're talking about the community center, you're mostly talking about senior center activities. I don't think that would be sort of that full-blown discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Ms. Smith?
Is it reasonable, Mr. Powers, to ask this, like you said, till October, of having like, hey, let's do this on the first or second council meeting of the month? Is it a reasonable ask?
I think it depends on how big of a discussion you want to have. If this is just like an annual report, come in, have the department head do a 10, 15, 20-minute presentation on what's happened, what's happening, and what's going to happen. I think that's something that we could start in relatively short order.
Okay.
That said, I would have to go back to all those department heads and let them know that, and they would have to start putting things together. And I would say, recognize that, they don't have any model that we have used here to do that with. So that's probably going to mean they need to go out and beg, borrow, and steal from some of their peers to see what they've done at those organizations and then try to put that stuff together. So the first year would be definitely a little bit of a learning experience, trying to get it all in before October this year, because I would say we would not be able to do one in March. We'd be starting in like April. Probably be a little bit of a tall task to get everybody squeezed in. But that's definitely something I can take back with my department head meetings. We all meet once a month, review things that are going on in all of our departments together. And then, we can kind of talk about what's a reasonable schedule. I can get some feedback from them, and then I can bring that back and discuss that a little bit more with council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powers.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Can I just?
Mr. Moore?
Just a thought. I know that there are a couple of things that were mentioned here, like you get calls about, or that people are curious about, or that you have thoughts about. Are there? And I would just suggest to toss that as a possibility. If council, if the committee of the whole has 2 or 3 in particular that are priorities to you, we want to talk to the building department about these issues. We want to talk to the police department about these issues. We want to talk to, these are the ones that are most important for us, because if you're putting it, here's our council's, that's what I thought this was going to be. What is council going to work on the next year? And so, but if those are the things that you guys think are most important and would like to hear more about, you might want to talk about that and figure out, this is, I think, is one that we'd all really like to hear from now or in the nearest future, in case we don't get to, I don't know, the water department, for example. I mean, that may be one that there are still issues with that people want to talk about, maybe not, so.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Anyone else? Any other comments? Great. Then I hereby adjourn the committee of the whole. Thank you.
Right now, it doesn't.
no.